The day I found out I was having quadruplets, I was still worrying about how I'd support 4 kids in the future. Then my husband Lucas sent me a message. "I'll give you $100 million. Divorce me." My hands were shaking with excitement as I trembled typing my reply. OMG. Why didn't you tell me about this sooner? I signed the papers, got the money, and vanished in a flash. Later, the whole city was buzzing about how that ruthless Mr. Ashford had lost his mind, searching everywhere for his ex-wife, who'd taken $100 million and disappeared. I pinched my thigh hard, and the sharp pain told me this was all real. I felt pretty impressed with myself. I'd gotten pregnant with 4 at once. But walking out of the hospital clutching that ultrasound printout, it felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I'm Emma, and I'd married into the wealthy Ashford family a year ago. My husband Lucas was the richest man in the city. Our marriage was a complete business arrangement. No love, just mutual benefit. In our year of marriage, I could count on one hand how many times we'd actually seen each other. He was always on business trips, always in meetings, always not home. In the Ashford household, I was invisible. Just a thing his mother looked down on. They didn't even treat me like a person. Now I had 4 babies in my belly. How was I supposed to raise them? Would the Ashfords even let me have these children? Countless questions swirled in my head, giving me a splitting headache. I was walking down the street in a daze when my phone dinged. It was a message from Lucas. My heart jumped as I swiped open the screen. A few short words, like a cold knife, stabbed straight into my heart. "I'll give you $100 million. Divorce me." I stood frozen, reading it over and over, making sure I wasn't seeing things. $100 million. Divorce. The air went dead silent for a few seconds. Then an indescribable joy erupted like a volcano, instantly flooding through my entire body. My hands were shaking so much. I had to tap the screen several times before hitting the right spot. Trembling, I typed out my reply one word at a time. OMG, why didn't you tell me about this sooner? The reply came almost instantly. Classic Lucas style, short and to the point. "Tomorrow at 10 a.m. My lawyer will bring the agreement to you." I stared at my phone screen, grinning like crazy. $100 million? Forget raising 4 kids. I could raise 40. I carefully folded that ultrasound printout and tucked it safely into my purse. My steps so light, I practically floated. The 4 little babies in my belly seemed to sense my happiness and gave a little flutter. "Easy there, babies." I gently rubbed my stomach. "I'm about to take you to live in a big mansion and have a good life. As for Lucas, screw Lucas. Screw the wealthy elite." From now on, Emma was a rich woman, walking back into that place called home, the Ashford mansion that never felt warm. For the first time, the air actually seemed fresh to me. Humming a tune, I started packing my things. I didn't have much. 1 suitcase held everything. As for all those designer bags and jewelry Lucas had given me, I didn't touch a single piece. I'd already gotten $100 million from him. Why would I care about these little things? Next morning, 9:59 a.m. The doorbell rang, right on time. I opened the door to find Lucas's lead attorney, Mr. Harrison, standing there with a serious expression. "Mrs. Ashford." He pushed up his glasses and handed over a document folder. "These are the divorce papers Mr. Ashford asked me to bring you. Please look them over. If there are no issues, you can sign." "No problem. Absolutely no problem." I grabbed the papers eagerly and flipped straight to the last page, without even reading them. Mr. Harrison clearly wasn't expecting me to be so decisive. He paused, then reminded me, "Ma'am, don't you want to review the terms? Especially the section about asset division?" "No need." I picked up a pen and signed my name. "I trust Mr. Ashford's integrity. And I trust your professionalism." Mr. Harrison's expression turned strange, like he wanted to say something, but he kept his mouth shut. I finished signing and handed the papers back to him. "Mr. Harrison, when will the money hit my account?" That was the important part. "Mr. Ashford said it will arrive within an hour of your signature." "Great." I nodded with satisfaction. "Now hurry along. I've got a flight to catch." Behind his glasses, a flash of complete shock crossed his face. He probably expected me to cry, to make a scene, to cling desperately, to scream and demand to know why. Too bad he was wrong. All I wanted was to get my money and start my rich new life. I closed the door, grabbed my suitcase, and left that cage that had trapped me for a year, without a single backward glance. Lucas, the Ashfords, I hoped we'd never meet again. An hour later, my phone got a text alert from the bank. Looking at that long string of zeros, I squinted happily. Never before had I understood so clearly. That money truly was a wonderful thing, could soothe any wound and bring unparalleled security. I didn't go straight to the airport. Instead, I went to the most expensive residential development in the city. Hello, miss. Do you have an appointment? The sales agent eyed my suitcase with a barely concealed look of judgment. No. I shook my head and said directly, I want to buy your best penthouse unit. Full payment. The sales agent's professional smile froze on her face. I didn't waste words, just pulled out my phone and showed her my bank balance. The next second, her attitude did a complete 180. Half an hour later, I swiped my card and bought an $80 million penthouse suite. Move and ready. Standing before the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the bustling city below, I let out a long breath. Freedom felt so good. I touched my still flat belly and said softly, babies, do you like our new home? After getting settled in, the first thing I did was call my mom. The phone barely rang once before she picked up. Emma, you finally remembered to call me. How's life treating you at the Ashfords? Hearing my mom's caring voice, my eyes instantly welled up.
Mom.
My voice came out choked. What's wrong?
Who's bullying you?
I'm coming over right now. No one, Mom. I quickly said. I just missed you. I took a deep breath, steadied my emotions, then dropped the bombshell. Mom, I got divorced. Silence on the other end. A full 30 seconds of silence. I could picture my mom's shocked expression.
Divorced?
Her voice went up an octave. That bastard. How dare he divorce you? Is there another woman? My daughter isn't something he can just throw away. Mom, I'm the one who wanted it. I told a small lie, not wanting her to worry too much. I just felt we weren't right for each other well.
Good then.
My mom immediately changed her tune, her voice full of heartache and anger. I always told you that family has no warmth, and that Lucas is like a block of ice. Marrying into that family, of course you'd suffer. Where are you now? Come home right away. I'll send your dad to pick you up.
Mom, I'm fine.
I bought a new place at Central Park Tower. Central Park Tower? Those apartments aren't cheap. Where'd you get that kind of money? My mom asked suspiciously. Settlement from Lucas. At least he has some conscience. My mom snorted, then added no. I'm still worried about you being alone. I'm coming over tomorrow, okay? I agreed with a smile. After hanging up, my heart felt warm. This was what it felt like to have family backing you up. No matter what decision I made, they would always be my strongest support. Meanwhile, at that moment, the temperature at the Ashford mansion had dropped to freezing. Mr. Harrison placed the signed divorce papers on Lucas's desk, his expression complicated. Mr. Ashford. Mrs. Ashford. No, Miss Emma has signed. At that time, Lucas was overseas in an important international conference, and his phone was being held by his assistant. That assistant was someone Victoria had planted. Victoria was Lucas's childhood friend, self-proclaimed as the person who understood him best, and universally acknowledged in high society circles as the future Mrs. Ashford. A year ago, when Lucas suddenly announced he was marrying me and nobody, it shocked everyone. Victoria saw me as a thorn in her side. She believed I had stolen everything that should have been hers. Over the past year, she'd made my life difficult, both openly and behind the scenes. Everyone in the Ashford family had been charmed by her, and often criticized me. At her instigation, this time, while Lucas was abroad, she took his phone and sent me that divorce message. On her own initiative, she was certain Lucas was already tired of me, his trophy wife. She was equally certain that I would cry and refuse to agree to the divorce, just to keep my position as Mrs. Ashford. Then she'd say a few nice words to Lucas, making herself look gracious, while making him despise me even more. A perfect plan. Too bad, she miscalculated. One thing. Emma couldn't care less about being Mrs. Ashford. The servants at the Ashford mansion nervously reported to Lucas's mother. Emma.
She's gone.
Gone? Mrs. Ashford was in the middle of a face mask. She sat up slowly at the news. Gone is gone. She wasn't good enough for my son anyway. Did she take all her things? The servant said quietly. She only took one suitcase, the one she brought with her. All the jewelry you and Mr. Ashford gave her, and the card he gave her. She left everything behind. Mrs. Ashford's movement stopped abruptly. She ripped off her face mask. What did you say? Mrs. Ashford rushed into my room, what she called the guest room. In the walk-in closet, all those pieces of jewelry she and Mr. Ashford had given me to keep up the family's image, pieces I'd never worn once, were neatly arranged in velvet boxes on the vanity. Lucas's unlimited black card sat quietly with a note beside it. The pin is your birthday. I never used it. Mrs. Ashford picked up the card, her face cycling between pale and flushed. She had always assumed I married into the Ashford family for money. He guarded against me, watched my every move, terrified I might take even a penny more than I deserved. But now, not only had I left with nothing, I hadn't even taken the things they'd graciously bestowed upon me. They never expected this. What's she trying to pull? Who is she putting on a show for? Mrs. Ashford threw the card on the ground in fury. Lucas's sister Charlotte ran in gloating. Mom, who cares what she's up to? It's better that she's gone, isn't it? Now Lucas can finally be with Victoria. Victoria just called. She said she's coming over to have dinner with you tonight. The mention of Victoria, Mrs. Ashford's expression softened. Victoria is always so thoughtful. She smoothed her hair and resumed her superior attitude. Go tell the kitchen to make some of Victoria's favorite dishes. Tonight. Victoria arrived in high spirits. She wore a tailored Chanel suit and sat elegantly beside Mrs. Ashford, listening to her badmouth me, a victorious smile playing at the corner of her lips. Let's not speak of Alabama anymore, she said with false concern. She did keep Lucas company for a year. Leaving like this, she must be heartbroken. What's there to be heartbroken about? Charlotte rolled her eyes dismissively. My brother gave her $100 million.
She's probably out shopping right now.
Victoria's hand paused slightly as she lifted her teacup. $100 million? The message she'd sent didn't mention anything about money. Did Lucas add that later?
Impossible.
Lucas's phone had been with her people the whole time. Could it have been Mr. Harrison acting on his own? A flicker of unease passed through Victoria's mind, but she quickly suppressed it. Whatever happened, Emma was gone. That was enough. $100 million to be rid of her. She should count herself lucky. Mrs. Ashford sneered. I thought she'd demand more. Listening to them, Victoria's unease grew stronger. This was too easy. The clinking of fine porcelain seemed deafening in the suddenly tense dining room. Victoria's unease gnawed at the edges of her manicured composure. $100 million? Lucas wasn't a fool with his wealth. He was surgical, precise. Every contract he signed was vetted a dozen times. If he had given Emma $100 million, he hadn't just tossed it at her like spare change. It meant an ironclad legal protocol had been executed. Excusing herself to the powder room, Victoria locked the door, her hands shaking as she pulled out her phone. She dialed Lucas's executive assistant, Davis, the man she had been paying handsomely under the table. Davis, she hissed the moment he answered. What exactly did you tell Harrison to do? Exactly what you asked, MS. Sterling, Davis replied, his voice tight with nerves. You said Mr. Ashford wanted the divorce finalized immediately while he was in the air, to cut the dead weight. I used his encrypted proxy to authorize Mr. Harrison. Harrison executed the contingency draft. What contingency draft? Victoria's voice cracked. The Protocol D file. Mr. Ashford drafted it 6 months ago when he was facing the hostile board takeover. It was an emergency divorce settlement designed to transfer $100 million of clean, untouchable assets to Emma's name to protect her if the company went under, effectively legally severing her from his liabilities. He never used it because he won the proxy war. But it was fully signed and waiting for authorization. You told me to finalize the divorce, so I gave Harrison the green light. The blood drained from Victoria's face. The pristine marble walls of the bathroom seemed to spin. Lucas hadn't drafted that document to discard Emma. He had drafted it to protect her. You idiot, Victoria breathed, terror gripping her chest. He's going to kill us. 30,000 feet above the Atlantic, Lucas Ashford stared at the glowing screen of his tablet. The global teleconference had just concluded, securing a massive European acquisition. He rolled his shoulders, the exhaustion of the past 72 hours settling into his bones. Get me a line to Emma, Lucas said, his deep, gravelly voice cutting through the quiet hum of the private jet. He rubbed his temples. He had been so consumed by the corporate war for the past year that he had treated his home like a hotel and his wife like a ghost. But the war was over now. The Ashford empire was completely under his thumb. He finally had the time to be the husband he secretly wanted to be. He had a velvet box in his briefcase holding a pink diamond ring, intending to ask Emma to start over. To have a real marriage. His new temporary assistant, a junior staffer filling in while Davis remained in New York, cleared his throat nervously. Sir, I can't reach Mrs. Ashford. And, sir, there's an automated alert from the private wealth management sector that came through while you were presenting. Lucas frowned. Show me. The assistant handed over a secure tablet. Lucas's sharp gray eyes scanned the notification. Transfer complete. 100 million US dollars. Beneficiary, Emma Ashford. Trigger, dissolution of marriage, Protocol D. For a moment, Lucas simply stopped breathing. The air in the cabin turned to ice. Who authorized this? His voice was barely a whisper, yet it held the destructive force of a hurricane. The log shows it was authorized by your encrypted executive key, sir. Handled by Mr. Harrison. Lucas didn't scream. He didn't throw the tablet. Instead, a terrifying, absolute stillness washed over him. He pulled out his personal phone, the one Davis had been managing for the past 2 days, and accessed the deleted messages cache. I'll give you $100 million. Divorce me. Sent from his phone. To his wife. And her reply. OMG. Why didn't you tell me about this sooner? Lucas stared at her enthusiastic, almost ecstatic response. The words felt like physical blows to his chest. She didn't fight for him. She didn't question it. She just took the money and ran, thrilled to be rid of him. A dark, possessive fury ignited in his veins. Tell the pilot to push the engines to the red line, Lucas commanded, his eyes completely devoid of warmth. And get my legal team, my private security, and Davis on the tarmac when we land. No one leaves. When Lucas kicked open the heavy oak doors of the Ashford mansion 12 hours later, the temperature in the house plummeted. His mother and Charlotte, who had been enjoying afternoon tea, froze at the sight of him. He didn't look like the polished billionaire CEO. He looked like a wolf that had been starved and beaten. Lucas, darling, you're back early. Mrs. Ashford stood up, offering a fragile smile. We have some wonderful news. That little gold digger finally showed her true colors and… Where is she? Lucas's voice shattered the silence. Emma? She took the money and left. Good riddance, I say. Now you and Victoria can. I didn't authorize the divorce. Lucas stepped fully into the room, his presence suffocating. Victoria stole my phone. Davis forged my proxy. Both of them are currently in police custody for corporate espionage and wire fraud. Mrs. Ashford gasped, clutching her pearls. Lucas, you can't be serious. Victoria is family. She did this for you. She did this because she's a parasite, Lucas snarled, turning his gaze to his sister, who shrank back into the sofa. And you too let it happen. You drove her out. He turned on his heel, striding toward the guest room. He opened the door. The room was stripped bare of her presence. The walk-in closet was a graveyard of velvet boxes, millions of dollars in diamonds, emeralds, and designer bags, entirely untouched. The black titanium card he had given her on their wedding day sat perfectly aligned in the center of the vanity. She didn't take anything of theirs. She only took the money she legally obtained through the contract. A ragged breath escaped his chest. He picked up the black card, his knuckles turning white. Find her, he barked into his earpiece, speaking to the head of his private intelligence firm. Turn the city upside down. Freeze her accounts. Track her passport. I don't care what it costs. Sir. The voice crackled back, sounding deeply uncomfortable. We tracked the $100 million. It hit her account and was immediately dispersed into a web of untraceable offshore trusts registered under a shell corporation. We also checked the penthouse she bought at Central Park Tower. She flipped it to a Russian oligarch 3 hours after buying it for a $2 million profit. She's completely off the grid. Lucas closed his eyes, leaning heavily against the doorframe. She hadn't just run. She had outsmarted him. She had vanished. Keep looking, he ordered softly. No matter how long it takes. 5 months later, the ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and blooming bougainvillea. I sat on the sun-drenched terrace of a sprawling, heavily guarded Mediterranean-style villa in Carmel-by-the-Sea, California. My dad, a retired forensic accountant who knew exactly how to hide money from billionaires, had set up the perfect ghost life for me. Emma, sweetie, your smoothie is ready, my mom called out, stepping onto the terrace holding a massive mason jar filled with spinach, berries, and God knows what else my nutritionist demanded. Thanks, Mom. I groaned, reaching for it. I shifted my weight, and the lawn chair gave an ominous creak. I was exactly 6 months pregnant, but because I was carrying 4 tiny humans, I looked like I was ready to give birth to a beach ball. How are the little ones today? She asked, her eyes softening as she placed a hand on my massive, tight belly. As if on cue, a sharp kick landed right near her palm, followed by a flurry of movement on the left side. They're having a UFC match in there. I chuckled, though I winced slightly. I swear, baby A is going to be a soccer player and baby C is just using my ribs as a xylophone. Life was incredibly, unimaginably good. The $100 million, plus the $2 million profit from flipping the penthouse, which I felt incredibly smug about, had given me absolute freedom. I had hired a top-tier private medical team, a nutritionist, and a security detail composed of ex-Navy SEALs who patrolled the perimeter of the estate. I never watched the news, but my dad occasionally gave me updates. Lucas had gone completely unhinged. He had utterly dismantled Victoria's family business, bankrupting them within a month. He fired his mother from the charity board and cut his sister's allowance to zero, forcing her to get a real job. And he had a standing bounty of $5 million for any verifiable information on my whereabouts. I felt a twinge of guilt, but only a twinge. If he wanted to act like a psycho now, that was his problem. When we were married, he hadn't given me a second glance. Why the sudden obsession? My dad theorized his bruised ego couldn't handle being the one who got dumped and outmaneuvered. I agreed. Rich men hated losing control. Dr. Eris is coming over at 2 for your ultrasound, Mom reminded me, pulling me from my thoughts. We need to finalize the birth plan. With quadruplets, you know we can't go to full term. I know, I sighed, rubbing my belly affectionately. I just want them to cook for as long as safely possible. We're aiming for 32 weeks. Later that afternoon, Dr. Eris rolled his portable ultrasound machine into my living room. The cold gel made me shiver, but the moment the rhythmic, galloping sounds of 4 little heartbeats filled the room, tears pricked my eyes. It never got old. Everything looks phenomenal, Emma. Dr. Eris smiled, pointing to the screen. Weights are excellent. Blood flow is perfect. You are a walking miracle. I have excellent motivation, I said, smiling back. But my peace was living on borrowed time. I didn't know it then, but a tiny slip-up was about to bring my fortress crumbling down. 3 days later, I craved a very specific, absurdly expensive artisanal truffle chocolate that was only sold at a boutique in San Francisco, about 2 hours away. My security detail offered to go get it, but I had severe cabin fever. I wanted to walk around. I wanted to feel normal. Disguised in a massive, oversized cashmere coat, and Hermes silk scarf wrapped around my head, and large sunglasses, I waddled into the back of my armored SUV. My head of security, a giant named Miller, drove me to the city. The boutique was quiet. I was admiring a display of dark chocolate ganache when the bell above the door chimed. I didn't turn around, too focused on deciding between the raspberry or the hazelnut. I'll take the entire display of the hazelnut truffles. A deep, icy, unmistakably familiar voice resonated through the small shop. My heart completely stopped. The blood rushed from my head. I froze, my hand hovering over the glass case. It couldn't be. San Francisco was 3,000 miles away from New York. What were the odds? I slowly shifted my gaze to the reflective mirror behind the counter. Standing there, looking leaner, sharper, and far more dangerous than I remembered, was Lucas. He was wearing a dark bespoke suit, flanked by 2 serious-looking executives. He was in the city for a tech acquisition. Don't panic, I told myself. You're wearing a disguise. You're huge. He won't recognize you. I lowered my head, keeping my back to him, and pulled my coat tighter around my massive belly. I signaled to the cashier to cancel my order and began to shuffle toward the door, trying to make myself invisible. I was 3 feet from the exit when my foot caught the edge of a display stand. I stumbled. I didn't fall. Miller, who had been waiting outside, burst through the door with terrifying speed and caught me by the arm. But the sudden jolt caused my sunglasses to slip down my nose, and the Hermes scarf fell back onto my shoulders. I gasped, steadying myself, and as I looked up, my eyes locked directly with Lucas's. Time stopped. The low hum of the city outside faded away. Lucas stared at me. His gaze traced my face, the face he had been tearing the world apart to find. Then, agonizingly slowly, his eyes drifted downward, landing on the massive, undeniable mound of my stomach pressing against the cashmere coat. I saw his brain short-circuit. I saw the anger, the shock, the confusion, and then the catastrophic realization crashing into him all at once. Math is a universal language, and Lucas was a genius. We had slept together exactly once, during a rare, vulnerable night 7 months ago before he left for his extended European tour. Emma, he breathed, his voice cracking, devoid of all its usual power.
Panic seized me.
Miller, get me to the car.
Now.
Miller didn't ask questions. He practically hoisted me off my feet, shoving open the door and shielding me with his massive frame. Emma, wait. Lucas roared, snapping out of his shock. He lunged forward, shoving his own executives aside. We burst onto the sidewalk. Miller shoved me into the back seat of the SUV and slammed the door just as Lucas reached for the handle. The doors locked with a heavy thunk. Lucas slammed his hands against the tinted glass, his face pale, his eyes wide and frantic. He was yelling something, but the soundproofing of the armored car muffled his voice. Drive, Miller.
Drive.
I yelled, my heart hammering against my ribs, so hard it hurt. The tires screeched as the heavy SUV tore away from the curb, leaving Lucas standing in the middle of the street, staring after us like a man who had just seen a ghost. I sank back into the plush leather seats, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I pressed them to my belly, taking deep, shuddering breaths. It's okay, babies, I whispered. Mommy's got you. But I knew the truth. The hunt was over. Lucas Ashford had found me. It took him exactly 4 hours to breach my father's ghost protocols. When you have unlimited resources and you finally have a geographic location to focus on, hiding becomes impossible. That evening, as the sun dipped below the Pacific, painting the caramel sky in shades of violent orange and bruised purple, a sleek black helicopter landed on the beach below my cliffside villa. Miller burst into the living room, his hand resting on the holster at his hip. Boss, we have a perimeter breach. 6 vehicles approaching the front gates, and a chopper on the beach. It's Ashford. My dad, who had been reading a newspaper, stood up slowly. Hold the gates. Nobody comes in without a warrant. Let him in, I said quietly, surprising myself. Emma, no. My mom protested, rushing to my side. It's fine, Mom.
He knows where I am.
If we lock him out, he'll just buy the local police department or parachute onto the roof. Better to deal with it on my turf, surrounded by my guards. 10 minutes later, the double doors of the villa opened. Lucas walked in. He looked completely unraveled. His tie was gone, his collar open, his hair disheveled. He stopped in the center of the living room, surrounded by 4 of my heavily armed guards. His eyes locked onto me, sitting in an armchair, looking like a queen on a throne holding her giant belly. For a long minute, nobody spoke. The silence was heavy, suffocating. $100 million, Lucas finally said, his voice trembling with an emotion I couldn't identify. Anger? Grief? You took $100 million and vanished, and you didn't think to mention you were carrying my child? I raised an eyebrow, keeping my voice utterly flat. Correction. I am carrying my children. Plural. And I took the money because you offered it for a divorce. A very clean, very legal transaction. Lucas flinched, as if I had slapped him. I didn't send that message. Victoria did. I know, I said calmly. Lucas froze. You knew? I figured it out about an hour after I signed the papers. You're too obsessive about grammar to not capitalize the I in a text message, and your legal team would never move that fast unless they were executing a pre-existing contingency. But it didn't matter who pushed the button, Lucas. The fact remained that the draft existed. You had an exit strategy ready for us from day one. And I was tired of being an invisible ghost in your house. So, I took the exit. Lucas stepped forward, but Miller immediately blocked his path. Lucas glared at the giant man, then looked back at me, his eyes pleading. Emma, that draft was to protect you. If my company went under, that document would have given you clear, untouchable assets. It wasn't meant to discard you. I paused, slightly taken aback by that revelation. But I masked my surprise. Intentions don't matter anymore, Lucas. We're divorced. I am financially independent. And I am perfectly capable of raising these babies on my own. His gaze dropped to my stomach again, the hunger in his eyes almost frightening. You said children. Plural. Twins. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. Quadruplets. Lucas Ashford, the ruthless billionaire who had dismantled entire corporations without blinking, literally staggered backward. His knees hit the edge of the coffee table, and he sank onto it, burying his face in his hands. A raw, shuddering breath tore from his chest. 4, he whispered into his hands. My God. 4. He looked up, and to my absolute shock, his eyes were red-rimmed and wet. Emma, I'm sorry. I'm so damn sorry. I was a coward. I thought if I kept my distance, I wouldn't get attached. I thought I was protecting myself, but I just destroyed the only good thing I ever had. Please, let me fix this. There's nothing to fix, I said softly, though my heart gave a treacherous little ache. You can have visitation rights when they're born. I'm not a monster. I won't keep them from their father. But you and I, we're done. Lucas stood up slowly. The vulnerability in his eyes vanished, replaced by the terrifying, relentless determination of the apex predator I knew him to be. You're my wife, Emma. I don't care what a piece of paper says. I don't care if it takes me the rest of my life. I am going to win you back. He looked at Miller. Stand down. I'm leaving. He turned and walked out of the villa. I thought that was the end of it for the night. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of heavy machinery. I waddled out to the terrace and gasped. The massive, 20-acre estate next door to mine, which had been on the market for $50 million, was suddenly swarming with Ashford Corporation security, landscapers, and movers. Lucas stepped out onto the balcony of the neighboring mansion, wearing a casual sweater, holding a mug of coffee. He raised the mug toward me in a silent toast. He hadn't just found me. He had moved in next door. The following month was a masterclass in relentless, suffocating, absurdly expensive wooing. Lucas didn't try to break down my door again.
He was smarter than that.
Instead, he waged a war of attrition. When I mentioned to my mom that my back was killing me, a fleet of top-tier prenatal massage therapists arrived at my gate, fully paid for, with a note, use them or I'll buy the spa and shut it down.
Elle.
When I developed a bizarre craving for fresh, authentic Neapolitan pizza at 2 a.m., a helicopter literally airdropped a chef from Italy who set up a wood-fired oven in the empty lot across the street, just waiting for my order. He didn't push to see me. He just made sure I knew he was there. Every single
second.
My parents, initially furious, slowly began to soften. He's persistent, I'll give him that, my dad muttered one afternoon, watching Lucas personally chop firewood in his yard, shirtless, gleaming with sweat. I caught my mom staring at him through the binoculars. "Mom," I scolded, snatching the binoculars away.
What?
"I'm just verifying his structural integrity," she defended shamelessly. "Emma, honey, he's trying. And you're carrying 4 of his children. Maybe you could just talk to him?" "I don't need a man to raise my kids," I huffed, crossing my arms over my chest, which was a logistical nightmare given my size. I was 30 weeks pregnant now. I felt like a beached whale. Breathing was a chore. Sleeping was impossible. That night, a massive storm rolled in off the Pacific. The wind howled, and the rain lashed against the windows. At around 11 p.m., the power grid for the entire coast failed. The villa plunged into darkness. My backup generators should have kicked in, but there was only silence.
Dad.
I called out, using my phone's flashlight. "The generator is flooded," my dad yelled from downstairs. "The basement took on water?" I groaned, leaning against the kitchen counter. Suddenly, a sharp, agonizing cramp seized my lower abdomen. I doubled over, dropping my phone. It wasn't the usual Braxton Hicks. This felt like a hot knife. "Mom," I screamed, panic rising in my throat. Another contraction hit, harder this time. Then, I felt a sudden rush of warm fluid down my legs. My water had broken. "Oh, God," my mom panicked, rushing into the kitchen. "The babies. It's too early. Miller, get the cars." "The driveway is completely washed out by a mudslide." Miller roared, running and soaked to the bone. "We can't get the SUV out." I sobbed as another contraction tore through me. "Call an ambulance. Lines are down. Cell service is dead." Dad yelled. We were trapped. I was going into labor with quadruplets, in the dark, in a storm, cut off from the world. Terror, cold and absolute, gripped my heart. I was going to lose them. Suddenly, the front doors burst open. The beam of a high-powered tactical flashlight cut through the darkness. It was Lucas. He was drenched, wearing heavy boots and a rain slicker. Behind him were 4 paramedics carrying massive trauma bags. "I saw your lights go out and my security cameras caught the mudslide on your driveway," Lucas said, his voice entirely calm, entirely in control. "I brought my estate's medical team. I have a medevac chopper spooling up on my helipad. It's built to withstand gale force winds." He didn't wait for permission. He crossed the room, scooped my massive, heavy frame into his arms as easily as if I weighed nothing, and held me tight against his chest. He was so warm. For the first time in a year, I buried my face in his neck and let out a sob of pure relief. "I've got you, Emma," he whispered fiercely into my hair, striding out into the storm. "I swear to God, I've got you. Nothing is going to hurt you or our babies." The chopper ride was a blur of pain, noise, and Lucas's unyielding grip on my hand. He didn't let go once. When we landed on the roof of the San Francisco Medical Center, a small army of doctors was waiting. They rushed me into the bright lights of the trauma delivery room. Lucas was forced to put on scrubs, but he never left my side. "You're doing great, Emma," Dr. Aris encouraged, having been flown in on a separate chopper by Lucas's team. "We're at 30 weeks. That's fantastic for quads. But we need to do an emergency C-section right now." I was terrified. I squeezed Lucas's hand so hard I felt his bones grind, but he didn't flinch. "Look at me, Emma," Lucas commanded softly, his gray eyes locking onto mine, anchoring me in the chaos. "Focus on me. We are going to meet our children." The anesthesia kicked in, numbing me from the chest down. The surgery felt like a bizarre tugging sensation. Minutes stretched into eternity. And then, a sound pierced the sterile air. A tiny, furious, raspy cry. "Baby A is out," the surgeon announced.
Boy.
"Good lungs." Tears streamed down my face. Lucas leaned down and kissed my forehead, his own tears mingling with mine. "1," he choked out. 2 minutes later. "Baby B." Another boy. "Baby C," a girl. And finally, "Baby D," a girl. All 4 are out and stable. Moving them to the NICU. I caught a brief, blurry glimpse of 4 tiny, red, screaming miracles before they were whisked away to the incubators. The exhaustion crashed over me like a tidal wave. "You did it," Lucas whispered, his forehead resting against mine. "You're incredible." "Our babies," I mumbled, my eyes drooping. "Our babies," he confirmed. The next few weeks were a grueling marathon of NICU visits. The babies, Leo, Liam, Lily, and Luna, were tiny but mighty. They fought for every ounce of weight. Lucas was a revelation. The ruthless CEO who used to work 100-hour weeks didn't step foot in a boardroom. He set up a makeshift office in the hospital cafeteria. He learned how to change micro-preemie diapers. He sat for hours doing skin-to-skin kangaroo care, with 2 babies tucked into his shirt at a time, looking completely ridiculous and utterly devastating. One afternoon, I walked into the NICU to find him softly singing a lullaby to Luna, who was gripping his massive index finger with her tiny hand. I leaned against the doorframe, watching them. My heart, which had been locked in a fortress of anger and self-preservation for so long, finally cracked open. "She has your nose," I said softly. Lucas looked up, his eyes warm. "God, I hope not. I hope she looks exactly like her mother. Stubborn, beautiful, and completely impossible to control." He carefully placed Luna back in her incubator and walked over to me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the black titanium credit card, the one I had left behind in the mansion. "I want you to have this," he said quietly. I frowned. "Lucas, I have $100 million. I don't need your card." "I know," he smiled gently. "You don't need my money. You don't need my protection. You don't need me at all. And that is exactly why I'm asking you to let me stay. Not as a benefactor. Not as a boss. Just as a man who loves you. Who wants to earn the right to be your husband again." He didn't pull out a ring. He didn't demand I sign a new marriage certificate. He just stood there, completely vulnerable, offering me the one thing he had never given me during our actual marriage, a choice. I looked at the card, then up at his hopeful, terrified face. I reached out and took the card, slipping it into my pocket. "You're on probation, Mr. Ashford," I whispered, stepping closer until my chest brushed against his. "And trust me, my performance reviews are brutal." A slow, breathtaking smile broke across his face. He wrapped his arms around my waist, pulling me against him, and kissed me. It wasn't a kiss of possession or dominance. It was a promise. 2 years later. "Lucas, stop him. He's got the dog's tail." I screamed from the kitchen, desperately trying to balance a tray of cupcakes while corralling Lily, who was currently attempting to color the white marble walls with a permanent marker. "I've got him," Lucas yelled back from the living room, making a diving tackle onto the plush rug to scoop up Leo before the golden retriever could lose its patience. The penthouse at Central Park Tower. Yes, Lucas had bought it back from the Russian oligarch for triple the price just because I casually mentioned I missed the view, was complete chaos. Toys were scattered everywhere. The immaculate, minimalist decor had been completely ruined by 4 toddlers who operated with the destructive efficiency of a tactical strike team.
The doorbell rang.
Lucas, holding a squirming Leo under one arm, opened it. His mother stood there, looking stiff and uncomfortable, holding 4 neatly wrapped gifts. It had taken 2 years of intense boundaries, therapy, and Lucas threatening to legally disown her, but Mrs. Ashford had finally learned to respect me. She knew one wrong word, and she would never see her grandchildren again. "Emma, dear," she said tightly, stepping inside. "The place looks very lively." "Thanks, Barbara. Try not to step on the Legos, they're lethal." I smiled brightly, kissing her cheek just to see her twitch. I walked over to Lucas, handing him a cupcake. He kissed my forehead, his arm wrapping naturally around my waist. "Surviving," he murmured in my ear. "Barely." I laughed, leaning into his strength. I looked around my chaotic, loud, messy, incredibly expensive, and utterly perfect home. I had started with nothing but a contract. I had taken the 100 million and run. But in the end, I had gained something money could never buy. I had built an empire of my own. And the king just happened to work for me.